Setting up shop.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Setting Up Shop, the podcast all about becoming a creative person who then decides to sell their things in a variety of different ways. My name's Dan, I'm a woodturner from the UK, and as always, my co-hosts are Heidi, a potter from America, and Rasmus, a blacksmith from Norway, which I can now say from personal experience is very cold and should not be visited in the winter.
Wait, me or Norway?
Well, I mean, I would never call you cold, Rasmus. And as we've stated by others of our friends, what happened in Norway stays in Norway.
Let's keep it that way.
Absolutely. So just a little update for everyone, because those of you who are following along the journey, you would have last heard from us in December of 2023. We are recording now in 2024. So we've had a few discussions about the way we want the podcast to go. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback. Everyone seems to be enjoying it, which is great. Please tell your friends, share it to everyone you know and love, because the viewership going up always helps us. So there are a few things we hope to do this year. The first one is expand our Patreon offerings. It is a sad reality of everything that there is always a cost, as we discuss on this podcast. Our mission is to never try and make this podcast a business. So we're not going to go out of our way to try and pull in more money and become doing this full time. But there are costs that are associated with it. So it would be nice if we could cover those costs. And so we can feel happy to keep recording for you guys and sharing, I was going to say knowledge, sharing our experiences and also some of the things that maybe we've encountered so that you don't have to, and helping you out in that way. Other than that, we've got a variety of topics we're going to cover. But as always, if there's something you think we haven't covered or you want us to cover in more detail, please email us in or message us on social media. So without further ado then, our topic for today is goal setting. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what is a goal, how to set one, and then we are actually going to focus on this in a slightly different way from most things you'll find on the internet. We're going to talk a little bit about things that might derail you from that goal, things that you might not have planned for, and ways in which that you can hopefully hit that reset button and get back on track to what you're doing. So first of all, we want to look at goal setting. And a really handy trick on this is starting with what is it you want to achieve at the end? What's your end result? And then working backwards to set goals. But also from the point of view of a goal, what is it? How long should it take? Etc. etc. Heidi, would you mind giving us a few examples and maybe talk a little bit about longer term and shorter term goals to start with?
Sure. So, of course, like everybody wants to make $1 million, but that's probably not a goal that you can set and achieve within a year unless you're Elon Musk, who can probably do that in a week. So it would be more or less where you want the status of your business to be throughout that year. You can also set longer term goals. Obviously, that would be like a 5-year goal plan, or, you want to eventually hire on staff and what that looks like. But if we were just looking at a year length goal, it would be something like, I want to onboard 3 more customers this year. Say you already have 10 customers that are on the regular that are ordering from you, whether that is a wholesale consignment shop or someone that has a gallery that they're asking you to fill. Say you want to add 3 more clients to that, identifying the bite-sized steps and making sure that that is an achievable goal within the year. There are smaller goals, right? Like I want to buy a new table presentation for my market. So you have to look at your finances. Can I pay for that right now and just execute it within the week? Is that a week-term goal, or is that something that I have to save up money for, and that therefore I need 3 months to build up capital to purchase this equipment or this table for my booth? So that would be considered a short-term goal, right? It's something that's not outrageously expensive that you need 5 years to pay for, but it is something that you do need within a certain amount of time, and you can possibly have the finances or if you're making it, the ability to make that thing within a shorter amount of time, like a bite-sized goal. And then there's larger goals that are year long that you would then identify smaller goals that you have to hit, which we call in project management milestones. So if you're talking about like, I want to have a better website presentation by 2025. Within that, you have to think about all the assets that you need for a better website presentation. Is it more client feedback so that you have more data to put onto your website? Is it more product development? Is it I need to hire out a photographer to take photos of my product, but also take photos of myself? You can kind of look at that in year quarters, like, okay, during this quarter, I can be doing my planning stage. And then you set up a date. And then if it's, I need to purchase assets for my website, or I need to get, I need to hire on someone to build that website. I did it myself with free tools online. So it's not hard, but if it's somewhere that you're like, I can't do this, then that's like another goal within a larger goal. And you map out those milestones through the year so that, number one, you're not overwhelmed with the end goal, right? Like we don't want to set a goal that's going to make us upset. Yeah. Our goals really should be a positive thing for you so that you're looking forward to achieving that goal and attaining that goal. Maybe the steps within it might be a little bit painful. Like we were talking offline a little bit about having an accountant and, gathering all of that material for an accountant for your end of year taxes. Dry subject, terribly boring, absolutely necessary to be where you need to be as a small business. So if you look at those, like the paperwork goals, then you look at like the fun goals and you look at your business goals, you can kind of commoditize your goals by that whole standard. But I think
that's very well described. I mean, that's basically now the end of the podcast.
There you go. Thank you.
Almost as if we asked a project manager to describe their day job and apply. Yeah. Exceptionally well described, Heidi. Thank you very much. I think it's an important distinction to make as well between goals and tasks, and don't just like write a list of things you need to do. They aren't goals. There's very much a difference between, there's some stuff I need to do. However, you might just define that word need. Why do you need to do those things? Because if I do this, and it will then allow me to achieve that. That is the goal. And then it's the things below that are the steps, or in some cases, as Heidi said, the milestones to getting there. We were mentioning again a little bit in the pre-show chat about rewards. And realistically, you shouldn't have to incentivize yourself to do the thing, because if you're not enjoying what it is you're doing, then why are you doing it? So you want to try and keep your creativity and everything else. But equally, and this is a bit of a sidebar, something people might enjoy is that most of the creative people we know in some way, shape and form, or are either gamers or D&D players or something similar. And so they enjoy and are quite familiar with skill trees, with that sense of, right, I'm level 1. I know this base level of knowledge. I know if I do X task more, I will get better at this thing, and then I'll level up. And a lot of us crafty people, you can kind of almost feel it when you've hit this new level, when you've reached and go, I'd plateaued. I'd got stuck at this one point for ages. I couldn't do this thing, whatever it may be. And now I can do it really easily. So I've leveled up and I can move on to the next thing. If you physically want to write out a skill tree, and whether this be digital, and there are apps for this, you can probably appropriate from D&D software apps or printouts. There's nothing wrong with writing out right, here are my levels, here are the things I want to do, which is, and this is a lot easier to do if we're talking about developing our individual skills, because it is a skill tree rather than a business plan. But just as a subset to the topic we're talking about, like for wood turning, for instance, you could write on, right, I've never turned a bowl before. So what do you do? Well, the first thing is learn how to turn a bowl, turn 10 bowls. Right now, we're going to talk about turning a different design of bowl. That's level 1. I've achieved these things and I'm comfortable that I have reached X level of comfort with that. At the end of that, give yourself a reward.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that reward could be buy that tool that you don't need for the business, but you kind of like, you'd kind of want it. It's not expensive. It's within budget. It's within this thing, and you can do that. So it's still a help towards the business. Or it can be something really simple as you give yourself an hour's time to watch TV or play a computer game, or more importantly, spend with your better half, possibly. Whatever you want the reward to be, you can set that. So you have complete control over your own development, and you also have a tree that you can then look at and work your way along. There's a really good video of this from a lady who's developing her glass working technique that I spotted on TikTok a few months back, and I shared with the guys. So we'll try and put that in the group notes afterwards if we can find it. So now that I've derailed the conversation and diverted it, I will cunningly bringing it straight back now into the topic for today. I'm talking about goal setting. And Heidi spoke about, obviously, different timescales of goals. A goal is not the tasks; those are the milestones. So we can talk a little bit about short-term and longer-term goals. I think all of us, as Heidi said right at the beginning of her segment, go, "Oh, I want to earn X amount of money." Like that's a really long, that's a goal that's so far away, it's difficult to see how to achieve it. And you can work backwards from that. And let's say I want to earn $1 million. Okay, by when?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because if you say by the end of 2024, that's going to feel like a massive mountain to climb. If you say by the end of 2034, okay, that's 10 years. So then let's break that down. So how much is that I need to earn per year? And so you can calculate that out. I'm not going to start doing the mental arithmetic. You can calculate that out per year. You can talk about whether or not that's turnover or profit. That's a whole other conversation. Again, we're not going to get in the weeds with this. And you can then break each year down individually, and you can talk about, right, so how much would I need to make a month? And then realistically, this isn't going to be a linear line. This is going to be a big curve of like steep at the beginning to get up to that point and go from there. And you can break it down and say, right, how many wholesale orders of what value would I need per year to make that work? How many direct customer sales of what value would I need to make that work? Have I got enough product that I can manufacture per month to generate that revenue? Yes or no? And so you can give yourself an understanding of the way your business would need to work to reach that goal, which seems really unobtainable until you've defined a timeline, until you've made it measurable, until you've worked through all of these different things. And Rasmus has put his finger up, so he's going to jump in now and give us a word of wisdom from Norway.
Yes, it's about frozen things. Now, I think it's also important to consider just, is the business you currently have something that is scalable up to make that $1 million a year? Is there parts of the business where you need to expand into new or diversify into new avenues to actually have the cash flow to get there? Is it something you can do by yourself, or do you actually need to have employees to make that turnover or that profit, whatever goal you actually set?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So if you have in your mind that you want to make $1 million, whatever your currency is, if you scale it all back and you work out everything and you suddenly feel massively overwhelmed, or you're like, oh, I'm going to have to employ people, I don't want to do that, that's a good indicator that maybe that goal isn't for you.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with discovering that the goal you thought you wanted isn't actually going to make you happy and isn't actually going to be the way you want your business to run. So this is another reason for working out how achievable a goal is and working backwards from it. Because if you just see this whole pile of like things you don't want the business to be related to, people you don't want to have to employ, etc., etc. Just a load of stress that it's not that it's unachievable, but it's just not something you're interested in. Then maybe the objective's not for you. Maybe it needs to be something different.
I think it is important to start from the perspective of what your personal morals and goals are.
Yep.
And see where, or set your business goals to align with that.
Absolutely.
Or like you say, if you realize that, you start to develop anxiety when you break down your goals and realize these are things you don't want to do, then yes, that's the wrong goal for you. You need to redefine what the end goal is. Maybe it's not making $1 million. Maybe it's just to have stability and security for you and your family.
Yeah.
And you can probably get that at half the cost or a third of it. Or less so.
I think if we also think of it in a different way, so I'm going to bring in a business acronym because we're talking about business.
Everybody, hold on.
At some point. So we're going to talk a little bit about SMART objectives. By SMART, by SMART. So SMART objectives are basically, they are an objective that is specific. So it's really important that your goal isn't just, I want to make lots of money. Okay, what do you define as lots of money? What currency are we talking about? When do you want to do it by, etc., etc.? It needs to be a specific thing. It needs to be measurable. So again, if we go to the analogy of I want to make £1 million, okay, how do you measure that? How do you record that? How are you keeping tabs on that kind of thing? Alternatively, rather than steering away from the financial, I want to have made 1,000 mugs or 1,000 knives or 1,000 bowls. How do you measure that? Okay, are they all the same? Are they different sizes? Are you going to start trying to cheat yourself by making smaller ones that take you 2 minutes rather than the bigger ones that take you an hour? Like, you need it to be specific and also measurable, but you also need it to be achievable. So don't just say, I want to make 1,000 of X product in a week whilst you're still doing a full-time job. Like, that's not a realistic thing. So, and then the next part of it, the R part, is that it needs to be relevant. So it needs to be relevant to what you're doing. It needs to actually match in with your ethos, match in with what it is you're doing. There's no point me as a wood turner saying, well, actually, I'd quite like to turn 10 bowls this year. I want 2 of them to be out of glass. I want 4 of them to be ceramic. And I want to then do some of the others into metal spinning because I think that looks cool. And I'll go and find a metal spinner and pay him money to learn how to do that. They're all crafts. I've still turned bowls, but they're not improving my skill set in wood turning. They're not allowing me to necessarily sell that as a product. It's fun. It ticks a different box, but it's not a target that's fitting towards the overall objective. And the final one is for it to be time bound, as we've kind of said several times already. You need to put that time scale in place that partly makes you answerable, but also makes it easier for you to define and break down. If you're saying, going back to the, making 1,000 of whatever the product is, if you say that you're going to do that over a month, that's probably still a bit of tight for time, but actually more manageable. So you can then start going back to what we talked about in, I think it was episode 1 of season 1, about, right, what's your timetable? How much time do you actually have? Or you get 4 hours a week to actually make things. So 4 hours a week across 4 weeks. How much time, how much product have you got to make in those? Therefore, if you want to make 1,000, maybe that dictates what size the item is that you want to make. Have you got enough gas for your gas forge, for instance, Rasmus? Have you got the stock? Have you got all the products? Is everything set up? And then you can go for that objective. So that kind of is a very, very short thing there. SMART objectives, SMART, easy to find on the internet, worth looking up, worth playing around with how those work, because they really can help with goal setting. And also the milestones. Now, something that Heidi mentioned before, and it wasn't because it's specifically something that's happened to Heidi, but it happens to all of us. And actually, it was something I was bringing up at the beginning, because as some of you may have noticed, I like to talk, was the fact that it's all very well setting a goal, And it's very important to set goals, and it's very important to have an understanding of what you need to achieve to reach that goal, no matter what time scale we're looking at, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. But what do you do when something derails that goal? You can plan for things like, okay, what at some point this year, if you know what it's like for yourself, at some point this year, you might get sick. All right. We're heading into winter time. If you're someone who's prone to colds or whatever the case may be, you can factor that in. All right. What you can't necessarily factor in, so in the area that I live at certain times of the year, it's prone to flooding, which means that certain roads are shut, which means journeys that I take, whether it's for commuting or to and from various places, take me longer. And you might get stuck in a situation which is kind of, it eats into your time and wears on your mental health as well. You might get an unexpected bill. You could do literally nothing and someone could drive into your primary vehicle outside your house that's parked. Now, all of a sudden, you can't go anywhere. There's a bill coming up. Are they insured? Yes or no? You don't know. There's added stress, etc., putting on. And it could be the day that you are due to deliver your biggest wholesale order that's time sensitive to a customer. Okay? You can kind of factor in things like that. Like you can overthink and go, right, as a backup, will neighbor X take me if this happens or whatever, And the final one that affects all of us a lot and has particularly affected me in the last few months is emotional state. There will be days where you just don't care. Do you know what? It's really hard. I don't want to go in the shop today. I don't really want to sit in front of the computer and do my bills and my paperwork and everything else that I need to in order to get paid, because I would rather be in my shop. But then you don't enjoy your time in the shop because it's not what you should be prioritizing. Some of those things can be planned for. Other things can't. I'm pretty sure everyone listening to this podcast currently in recent times may or may not be aware of the COVID situation that for some of you probably is the reason why you got into working in craft and things like that. No one planned that. No one contingency planned for that. So we need to be aware of all of these things and actually talk about goals from this perspective. I've been talking for far too long at this point now. I'm going to pass this over to Rasmus first. I'm not asking for personal anecdotes. What I am asking for is, in this kind of a situation, what do you do? There we go. Nice broad subject.
Yeah.
Narrowed, nothing specific and measurable about that. What do you do?
For me, it's twofold. You try to prepare for as much as you can without preparing for anything specific. So an easy thing is to always have like a rainy day fund on your bank account, so that if your car is totaled, you can't get anywhere, you can pay the neighbor to take you, can get a rental car. You can cover that cost immediately, and you can not lose out on that immediate revenue that would screw you over a fair bit. You could try to diversify the business so that, there's no more markets suddenly. You can't have people come to your shop and pick things up or teach classes. Then your social media presence should be solid so that you can ship things out. You can have orders come in that way. You can maybe have an accident, so you can't go to the shop yourself and make things. So maybe have plans or booklets, instructional things that you can sell because you are already an established authority in your field and people trust your opinion. It is very difficult to do it all the way around and just try to sell plans and booklets and information without having anyone trust that you know what you're talking about. But if you do like all the grunt work, all the boring stuff early enough, then suddenly all of the challenges become a lot easier when you are in a difficult situation. Because all they have to do is then pivot a little bit instead of building something from the ground up. Very metaphorical.
This is far too well reasoned and worked out for a surprise question, Rasmus. I mean, I won't use the word impressed, but we'll definitely consider that in there. I think you're absolutely right. And of course you do. it's not about my opinion on what I think on this, but contingency planning is obviously something we should all be doing. And certainly from the point of view of, right, how do I pivot and change this situation? Heidi, I think you were one in a different hangout who said probably a couple of years ago now, that really got me thinking was the reason for owning your own website is because you own it. Like, if you sell a lot on Etsy and Etsy suddenly goes away, or it changes the algorithm and you can't get your sales back from it, or if Instagram and all the rest of social media suddenly disappears, what do you do? Where do you sell? What's your platform? How do you make people aware about who you are? Okay, so I'm not expecting a drastically different answer, but what would you do, Heidi, in this kind of situation?
Well, very similar to Ras. I'm a planner. So and I was born a worrier. So not a warrior, but a worrier. So I'm constantly thinking about the worst case scenario. And it's probably why I'm still working full time and have my business, right? Because I love that safety net of knowing that I have a full-time job and I can still be tinkering and figuring out this business without a whole lot of risk, right? Mm-hmm. So when I set my goals, I'm also looking at risk avoidance. So when I talk about, if I want to increase my client load, say something simple like that, my head is going to more towards, can I handle it? Do I have enough bandwidth? Do I have enough time to do it on my own? Or am I maxed out right now? And I look at the holiday season as my lead-in example. The more clients I have, the more holiday orders I'm going to have. If I'm already at capacity in the holidays, adding more clientele is not going to decrease the stress level that I have at that period of time. So I have to think about mitigation at that point before I reach burnout in the holiday season. And I definitely went into January. I think we've all kidded that January is the longest month of the year. I went into January with severe burnout this year. Mm. And part of that was not so much poor planning, but thinking that my planning was strong enough to withstand additional orders. I don't like to call myself a rescue ranger, but I sure do love the benefit of being able to be there for my clients when they suddenly realize that they don't have enough stock of something that I make. And I like to be able to say, yes, I can do that. But unfortunately, this year, saying yes was to the detriment of my mental health coming into January. So although my goal itself of having a certain number of clients, I had my planning correct, where it was like, okay, I need to make sure that my clients know that their cutoff for orders is October, so that I can make sure I have enough materials and I can plan out my bandwidth and everything else. Ultimately, I ended up using vacation days to be able to make up for other people's poor planning. And that felt good in the moment, right? Like, oh yes, I get to show them what I'm good at. And what I'm good at is making everybody feel good, and that's not really what my business is about. So number one, I've derailed my business plan because I like the feeling of making other people feel good and feeling like I've done a good service to people. But also the ramifications of that were almost like a rubber band effect, right? Like I stretch, and then I come back and I slap myself in the face, right? Like come January, I had nothing left in the gas tank. I was spent. I could not encourage myself to get into the studio. I still even though the holiday period is my largest time of sales, I'm at a point in my business where those sales continue in January and continue in February. I do not get a break. So I cannot afford the burnout in December. I cannot afford the burnout in January. I need to be more effective and making sure that my goal setting doesn't get derailed by my personal need to please. And unfortunately, I'm I'm through it, right? Like it took January. It took a huge chunk. I delivered my orders. Like that's not the problem. The problem is that I'm not a good person in capacity to everything else I need to be good at. Like I'm a mom. I had no patience. I'm a wife. I had no love to give. I own dogs. They did not get the attention they deserved. I have a home. It did not get cleaned in the way that it should have. I have friends. They did not get the attention that they deserved when we all suffer in January. And it was just my own, I did it to myself. The clients were never like, if you don't do this, I'm pulling my business. There was never that risk there. It was hubris for me. It was all me going, oh, yay, I get to help you.
Yeah.
Without the thought of my muscles are going to be tired. My brain is going to be done. And that's going to lead into January. So like it starts off the year wrong. And I don't think a whole lot of us talk about like what that part of the business is.
I think that's, first of all, thank you for your honesty and for sharing that. Absolutely. So interesting question. Did you reach your goal that you'd set?
Oh, I surpassed it.
Yeah.
But
so,
it was
so you reached the goal
definite.
and you smashed it, but there was the cost.
Yeah.
There was the cost that you hadn't factored in, partly because, as you said, it's like, even though you know it, and I'm similar to yourself, you're like, oh, I need to please the person, and like, and they're a customer, and this will stand me in good standing in the future. They've asked for more. Oh, well, okay. And it's not even about the money at that point. It's like, no. I want to keep them happy. I want to help them out. This is a stressful time for them, and it will help me, make me feel good. Yeah. And then the cost to that is as you said, it hits in so many other areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wasn't smart.
No.
if I may add in though, like all of the reasons why you wanted to do these things are admirable. They are good qualities in a person. But it might not be, as you say, good for someone who's trying to run a business. That being said, if you have the ability to plan and know that December is going to be crazy, I can plan for that. I will sacrifice as much as I need to make it happen, knowing I can recover in January. But that is planned, that is scheduled. Everybody agreed that I will be like non-functional human being in these 2 months for people around me. Is that okay? And people say, yes, then you can do that. But there's still the personal cost to you and your mental health, and you will feel like shit. You will feel like you lost out on things. You'll feel like you are not doing the job of being a mother and a wife that you have, quote unquote, imposed on yourself. But that's also the life you want to live.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things to note here. First of all, isn't it interesting how it wasn't that long ago that a job was 9 till 5, Monday to Friday? Or, if give or take on a few hours there, 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, that was the job. And it didn't extend past that unless you were, working in a coal mine and shift working or whatever else, because it was widely recognized. Everyone needed mental and physical rest and time away from job. Really easy to say, very difficult to do when you are trying to start your own business. You're trying to move on away from that element, the 9 to 5. You're trying to be creative, and you're covering 5 different aspects of jobs. You're not just the person making the stuff. You're also the social media person and the delivery person and all that kind of stuff. But we kind of don't say to ourselves, these are the hours I'm working, and anything else extra, I'm sorry, it's just not an option. Because that feels too restrictive, because we're trying to get the thing to go, and we're aware that we've got to do all of the jobs. And I've already forgotten my second point.
I can shoot in and say,
like, the fact that my wife is cleaning in the background, and she just cleaned the piano keys. And I trying to work out if it was her or the cat on the piano, and I was going to run down and film a record-breaking video for TikTok.
There you go. There's a goal.
There's a goal, absolutely. But the secondary point of that is trying to be more business-minded and having the courage to say no to people.
Yes.
Is a horrible thing when it's your business. Like in my day job in retail, every day I'm saying no to people. Like we frequently get people going, "Oh, have you got this to do this?" Nope, sorry. And when I started working there, it was, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Oh, is there anything else we could do to like find the thing?" And realistically, there is none. It's a yes or no question. It's like, I'm a lot more invested in it than they are. But when it's your business that you're talking about, it's almost your child, and you're kind of going, "But I want this to do really well for all of these things because it makes me feel good, and I don't want people to be mad at me." Being able to say, "No, I'm sorry, that's not achievable," that's tough. Even more so if it's at the beginning of your business and it's like, if they're just about to double the order, I know that if I pull like 4 all-nighters, I'll feel crap, but I'll have got double the revenue and they'll be really happy with me. Will they? Will they actually think what you think they're going to think? And will the standard of the product you've made be as good as the first lot? And all of that
all of those things are really difficult to manage.
Yeah.
Both the temptation of, I'll make more money. I can buy that new tool. I can feel like I've achieved something. And also, I want to please the customer. I don't want them to go to someone else. I don't want to lose the future prospects here. But I can tell you right away that you will fuck up and you will disappoint people. I do it a lot. I keep doing it. The only thing I try to is to keep learning from it and realizing that here's the concrete things I messed up, and this is the things I learned from it, and things I should do better next time and can do better next time. So that, that bridge is burned, but now I have the knowledge so that the next time I will do better and be better at that.
Yeah. I mean, going back to, well, all right, I'll give a personal analogy. So, business for Bevel this Christmas was not as good as last year. A lot of people in this country are financially worried. They're not spending things as much as they did previous years. The markets I went to, I spoke to people who were selling things that were handmade, people selling things that were imported, people selling all of the usual Christmas stuff like wreaths for the door and flowers and everything else. Everyone was saying that sales were down. And not like 5%. They were right down. Like year on year, my biggest market, I was £300 down from the previous year. The previous year I'd taken £500. So when I say I'm £300 down, that's like more than 50% down on sales. Not same range of products, but a wider range of products, better quality, nicer booth, draws more people in. It just wasn't, people weren't there spending as much. As a result of a lot of that, and the fact that due to a few personal things happening for us this year, I don't have any leave left in the year. It's all booked up for various events and things that are happening, some of which are exceptionally delightful and I'm looking forward to, but I don't have time that I can book off for markets throughout the year. So some of those are my personally made problems. Others are just things that have happened, like, we're in an economical downturn, et cetera, et cetera. I sell luxury items. It's going to be very difficult. So I was very grateful to go out and visit Rasmus in Norway and spend some time with him. And we spent several days at an event bullying each other into doing things. So why aren't you on Etsy, and why aren't you doing this, and why aren't you doing that, and all that kind of good stuff, and supporting each other in a manly fashion, and encouraging one another, which was really good fun. And I thought, this is fantastic. I've managed to avoid seasonal depression, which can occasionally hit, and it was really good for that period of time and for like the week afterwards. And then a couple of weeks later, I genuinely went through this whole thing of like, do you know what? sales aren't working, websites generated nothing, this has generated nothing, I'm getting no interest from this. Bearing in mind, I'm not putting any effort into this at all, but you conveniently forget about this at the back of your mind. And I went through a whole portion where I was like, shall I just close the whole thing down? I've given it a go for a few years. What I'm making are luxury items. I could go in a different direction, etc., etc. What I've actually decided to do for this year, and this is going into the reset element of it, is I don't have time to make things for the markets. I've been told by a few people that even at wholesale, my prices are possibly too high. So this year, my focus is going to be on improving my skill set, personal development, possibly getting a few qualifications that are available to me that might boost the perception of the way that I'm selling things and who I am professionally, but also just literally turning a lot of stock and trying to improve the process and trying to improve the time without lowering the quality. So by doing that, hopefully speeding up how quickly I'm making things, which automatically will then mean I can keep the shop hourly rate, but it will be a shorter period of time to make the thing. Therefore, the cost price can potentially come down. Whether I do that or not is a whole different thing. Is whether I reduce the cost price or not is profit margin maybe. But just to spend the year getting better at turning and posting about it, and not worry about the fact that I'm not going to a market, I'm not necessarily getting an order. There will always be the odd job that creeps in that I can do for a little bit that will go on the books to continue paying for the monthly fee for the website and all that kind of stuff. Write some newsletters about it, get better at the social media thing, all of that kind of stuff. And so I've had that mental reset of, hey, do you know what? My goal was going to be turnover X amount a month, because that will then achieve this, which can enable me to achieve that. Instead of which I've gone, let's not worry about that. And I'm in a fortunate position I can do that because I still have the day job. And I can say, let's take a step back, mental reset, focus on developing the tasks, developing the skills, getting better, and remembering why I enjoy doing what I do. I can possibly develop a few products and then go, right, how can I turn these cost effectively and all that kind of good stuff. And that has definitely enabled a mental shift back into positivity and not giving up and driving forwards and, wanting to interact with my friends a lot more, which it's weird. And it's something that Heidi mentioned. All of us know what each other's like, and realistically, we should be able to support each other a lot better with this. But that's normally one of the first things you do is, I don't want to bother each other. I don't want to bother you with my crap because I know you're going through your own. Whereas realistically, like a little voice recording on a WhatsApp message or, occasional nudges or something, or even, as I'm terrible for, just sending a meme you find funny. It really helps and just reminds people like, hi, still here, aware that you're still alive. Please be aware that I'm still alive and we like each other. It's all good. And all that kind of thing. I would ask what Rasmus does, but it's going to be dancing.
Well, yes. Of course it is. That's my whole reward system. My whole week is scheduled around when can I go dancing and how often do I need to go take weekends off to go dancing abroad and that kind of thing. But that's a different conversation entirely, I think. Just on the whole, not bothering anyone else is, especially amongst friends like we are, I wouldn't say it's fun to sit in the crap together, but it is a whole lot less lonesome. And it is also a whole lot easier to pick yourself up if you have someone to give you a hand while you're down there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, you don't want to bother people, but sometimes people want to be bothered. They just don't have the ability to tell you. Right?
Yeah, I think back to the amount of times that people, whether it's in Facebook groups or messaging chats, or our friend Red's the perfect one. like, the whole texting Tuesday thing that he's done for quite a while, of just sending messages to people and all that kind of stuff to remind them that, hey, you're alive, and checking and making sure people are okay. It's really easy to say, you can talk to me anytime. It's not so easy to remember that you've said that if you receive a message at 2:00 in the morning from a friend asking if you can chat and it's woken you up.
Mm-hmm.
If you're already awake because you have insomnia and you're playing a game and you're passing time, it's really easy to do. If it's disturbing your rest, it is a lot harder to kick that brain into gear and go, hey, do you know what? Yes, I can make time for you.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's the tricky bit, is that I'm well aware that many of my friends have a much wider life than just the interactions that we have.
What's that word? Life.
You've set up too easy a joke there, Rasmus. I'm not going to lead into that one. Yeah. But what is that word, life? It's that thing that we're all sort of. I was going to say circumnavigating, but that's the drain. Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to say something than it is to back it up in that regard. And I'm very fortunate that people that I have tried to speak to have been willing and able to, take that response. But it's having that element in the first place of, how do I start a conversation with someone? Because I know I need to have a conversation with someone, but I don't want to talk about deep and dark things. I just need human connection.
There's a viral thing going around right now. I forget he's like a social media influencer, but I forget his name, but he said that he gets these dark periods of time and he doesn't know how to ask his friends for time. And he's like, usually it's just 8 minutes. Mm-hmm. I just need somebody for 8 minutes and it's enough. I don't need 4 hours. I don't need a whole day. I just need 8 minutes. And it doesn't have to be an obligatory conversation. I just need someone to sit with me. And so what he started doing, instead of having to figure out what the conversation starter is, he basically, in his good times, he talks to his really close friends and people that he knows he can confide in and knows that they won't go out and tell everybody about, Heidi's having a really hard time. Did you know? She's always so happy. What's wrong with her? He knows that he can, in those times, say, you're a person for me. And if I ever say, you got 8 minutes, I don't have to describe anything else. To just say, do you have 8 minutes? And his friends know what that means, but also the feedback that he's received from his friends that have received that text message are overwhelmed with a sense of joy in a way that that person holds them to that esteem. And it's less about, what an inconvenience. It's more about, they value me. They value our friendship. They value our connection to let me in on their need for 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be any more than that. So you can develop code language with the people that you feel closest to. Fortunately, I'm a pretty open book. Obviously, I don't really, I don't know if it's an American thing. We just tell everybody everything. And it's whatever, but, I don't have that hang up. When I need attention, I just find it, I just seek it out, and I don't think about, and maybe that's selfishness too. I don't think about anything else than, okay, I would give this to somebody. So now I'm going to ask, I would do it for someone. I don't have a problem asking.
I think it's interesting. I think the guy you're talking about was Simon Sinek.
Yeah, exactly. Simon.
Who is a really, really interesting guy. And if you've not seen any of his videos on I think the why statements and all that kind of stuff from a business perspective, I thoroughly enjoy his work, and that it's definitely very interesting on that. I think from the perspective of what he's saying there, that would help me a lot is the fact that I will quite often try to initiate conversations with people and not let them know that I'm trying to initiate a conversation, because I need to have that interaction. And if you've not made that clear and the other person's busy, then understandably that they're not going to be that interested in responding to a meme or necessarily responding to an inane comment that you've possibly made. Because they're like, well, yeah, okay, that's mildly amusing, but I'm like working, or I'm dealing with some stuff with the kids, or I've got whatever else is going on in the life. So it's not been made clear that you're trying to have 8 minutes or whatever it is that you need just to kind of get your brain back on track. It's well worth mentioning at this point as well that the vast majority of us as creative people, and particularly small business owners, are lone workers.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Rasmus, even more so, you know, you live alone, and you are a lone worker, and you know, you could very easily go to and from and just like almost be anonymous, if it wasn't for the dancing and the internet and all of your other sort of things that you have gone out of your way to do. It would be very easy for you to, you know, potentially not be in a good place due to all of that. But then equally, your day job is smashing hot things with hammers, which just wears anyone out and takes an awful lot of stress away.
It is really cathartic. but also, like you said, I've tried to make a very conscious effort of doing dancing and not saying no to social things when I'm invited to them.
Yeah. That's a big caveat there.
Yeah, well, it is like I am pretty social. I do like to be around people every once in a while, not all the time. That's also the caveat. But it is very easy, and maybe too easy for me, to be stressed out about work, be in my own little world and my bubble, and not have the mental capacity or the headspace to reach out to other people to plan things and schedule things.
Can I
and that's why I try not to say no to an invitation, because especially when I know I'm bad at planning things, when I am in that kind of mood, when I need it the most, then I should just go and show up. And then if I don't feel like it anymore after an hour, then I go home. But I went there, I got that bit of connection.
Yeah.
And especially with the dancing, I mean, I dance on average at least 4 hours a week.
That's great.
But that's all on Mondays. So the rest of the week is sometimes it's just going to work and hitting hot metal until I can go dancing again.
I wanted to, sorry for jumping in, I wanted to share an observation that will not be new to you, but certainly something I observed when I was over there with you. I think you're your own worst enemy in some respects.
Yeah.
Because you can't focus on one thing. You've got so many things that you want to make and so many different ideas that are bouncing around your head that are just desperate to get out and do all at once, that you really struggle to go, right, for this week, I'm going to focus on this, and then that's going to lead to this, which will lead to that. And the next month, I can focus on making swords for lesbian weddings. Or whatever else it is that you've got in the Heidi's obviously not aware of this
No.
world. We'll have to explain that in a moment. But you know, there's so much that you want to achieve that it kind of sometimes gets in the way of each other.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're well aware of that, because several times when we were there, I was like, no, we're doing this, Raz, come back. We're doing this now. Put it down. We're doing this now. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and I am, but I'm hardly ever aware in the moment that I'm completely scatterbrained.
Yes. But I wouldn't even call it scatterbrained, because I think you give everything you do the same amount of attention and love. It's just that you don't then complete.
It's not linear.
Yeah, it's not linear. It's all kind of like it's all over the place. But hey, it works for you. You're able to sustain your lifestyle with it. So it isn't something that I'm trying to say you need to change the way you do things. It is just an observation that if there was a way that you were able to kind of just tweak it a little bit and focus things, then I think you could achieve goals easier.
And that is something I'm working on a lot, of trying to be more focused and trying to stay on track and just do the thing. And also, just if something needs to cool down for 10 minutes, I'll wait those 10 minutes and then keep going instead of doing something else for 3 hours, which happens surprisingly often. You would probably realize it's not that surprising.
So this leads in quite nicely into talking about barriers. And barriers for goals, which, I mean, the obvious barriers for ones like one of the first things that flags up for a barrier for goal is financial. So like, you can't achieve the thing because you haven't got the money to, whether it's buy the stock or buy the raw materials or the equipment or whatever it is. So if there is that barrier there right at the beginning when you're goal setting, we have to revert back to that goal's not going to be achievable. So possibly that's not the goal for you. Time as a barrier, again, refer back to that thing of if you've mapped out the time available to you, that's something you've got to manage. But as we've just been talking about, one of the other barriers is like a personal one. So for you, Rasmus, it's possibly that focus thing. That's like, what's the barrier to my goal to achieve X by Y date? It's probably this, because I go off on a rabbit hole tangent and I've suddenly made a really cool, fantastic thing, but that was not at all relevant to anything else I was doing for the goal. And now I've got a whole new product range in my head and I need to get it out of my head before I forget it.
You have no idea how many sketchbooks I have kicking about that are full of ideas and that I have not started on.
Absolutely. Me, like a flip side to that is actually the opposite, that I have a thing where, now I know this is stupid, if I'm not going to be amazing at it the first time I do it, why bother starting in the first place?
Oh.
Yeah, that's stupid.
I know it's stupid, and I know from personal experience and persevering with things, as I've mentioned in the past with wood turning, I can get to a point that I am happy at, and I know I can still improve, but I also know that I'm not atrocious. So I know I can do it, but it's knocking that barrier down in the first place of like just letting yourself do it and fail and get better. That's quite a big one for me. Heidi, I'll give you some time to think about yours rather than telling you what yours is like I've just done to Rasmus, which is mean.
No, tell me.
I don't know, in all honesty.
Oh.
I the only one I would think of is in some ways is almost over metricizing and over planning.
Probably, yeah.
And being so focused on the numbers that you've got to hit that target of whatever it is, vessels. Like you've probably already started recording the amount of vessels you've made this year.
Yeah. Well, that's part of my milestones, right? Like
yeah,
I have certain metrics that I want to make sure I'm hitting year over year. Number one, it helps me identify gaps in my process to make sure that I'm not wasting time on a specific, step in the process, or, am I getting better at what I'm doing? Yeah. Like, did it take me less hours in the studio to accomplish A, B, C, D, whatever? But I don't think that's a fault, but I do think that because I have that data, I get overconfident. Okay. And that overconfidence pushes me to a place where I think I can accept more work than what is manageable.
Yeah.
I will never fail, because I will just avoid sleeping and eating. But as I've stated prior, like the problem with being overconfident, the problem with feeling like I can constantly save the day is that I'm
sacrificing everything else.
I'm sacrificing myself as a person. But on top of that, I'm sacrificing what next month looks like, or I'm sacrificing possible goals that I could have been attaining, similar to Raz, I think, where it's like, oh, that can wait. I'm going to work on this thing, and I'm going to put all of my energy into this thing here. If energy was something that you could capitalize on, I'm wasting my energy on problem A for someone else. And yes, there is benefit in solving that problem for someone else, but ultimately it does not. Do you know the term, the juice isn't worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's not productive enough to really be beneficial for the business. And that's certainly, like, I would say overconfidence in myself is probably where I struggle the most. And that's probably a really odd thing to be like negative on yourself for. But when I look at Ben, counter, like when I look at his behavior, he's much more similar to you, Dan, where he will have this great idea and then it will stop him dead in his tracks and he will procrastinate all of his time away until there's some reason that he has to execute it. He does not have comfort and that confidence that I have, where I'm like, I don't know how to do it. I'll fucking figure it out. Like, he will stop and say, I can't do that. I've never done it before. Therefore, I will not start. And I'm overconfident, where I say, I've never done it before. Sounds like fun. Let's see if we can break things. And ultimately, I think that's like overconfidence is probably my, what would you call it? Kryptonite.
Barrier. Yeah. Kryptonite. Yeah, absolutely. Kryptonite sounds much more fun than barrier.
You did say the topic was kind of dry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only other barrier that I can sort of flag up there, and I'm sure there are more, is like an external one, which is the one that I sort of sprang to mind is raw material stockist always has what you want every month, and then you go to get your thing and someone else has come in and bought all of that stock this month before you've got there. And you like, oh well, but I need this, and they go, oh sorry, it's a 3-week delay before I get more of this. Well, that's pushed all of my goals back by 3 weeks, which throws everything else into disarray, and I haven't contingency planned for that, or I have, but my contingency plan is I've got to go and buy from this other stockist who is, a third more in cost. And that means that my margin is now shrunk and they're further away. So there's a cost in picking that up. And so, external things like that, or as has happened to some people in this country, my supplier's just shut down. Like, it's just gone. Like the guy who ran it is retired. His family weren't interested. He couldn't sell it to anyone. Just gone. Where do you get that from now? What happened? That can definitely throw out the goals and cause you problems, particularly if, like Heidi, you've got a lot of wholesale orders and stuff.
Yeah, we just had so I have this white glaze that I normally use for pretty much 90% of the products that a couple of my wholesale clients use. And they just realized that one of the ingredients used to make the glaze is either overly expensive or not available anymore, which changes the chemistry of the glaze altogether. So my product does not look the same as what it has historically looked, although that's not really a goal per se, but it does require attention on my part. Like, how do I problem solve through this? Like, okay, this is not the matte looking white that my products typically have. How do I negotiate through this? Do I need to find a new glaze? Do I need to mix the glaze myself? Do I need to just let my clientele know, hey, this is something that came up right now? Like, I have one order that needs that glaze, and I did a test, and it's a really high gloss white glaze now, and not a matte finish stony white glaze like it used to be. I'm trying to work it out on my end before I have to really do anything rash. But those are obviously, that's not like, it doesn't impact a larger goal.
Yeah.
But it does impact my product.
It impacts the time. It impacts the time that you're spending on achieving your goal.
It
because
does.
you're now having to deal with a situation that's important to you, but isn't at all factored in.
Yeah.
Because realistically, that could either be a super simple fix because you happen to know an alternative glaze from somewhere else, or another potter tells you, or it could be one that takes years of experimenting in free time, trying to find the right combination to get back to the glaze that you like.
I definitely think in this case, I'm just going to have to eat it and just deal with the fact that these mugs are going to be glossy now, because it seems like the product that used to be available in the market, the mine has shut down. So that material just is not available. And it's really unfortunate. And it's not available in the entire world because there was like one supplier that mined it and produced it, and the mines run dry.
Yep.
I mean, that circles a bit back to adversity earlier, and shit just happens that you can't deal with. And in this case, maybe it's just something you have to say, okay, this is the new world. This thing doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I have to tell the client because there's no alternative. This is just how it's going to be.
Yeah. The thing that's like really heartbreaking is it's the one glaze that I've used since I started. So I have like these hang-ups personally where I'm like,
and I get that. I get that. I mean, I would dare to say the whole blacksmithing community is going through the same problem because we are losing access to good forging coal because they're shutting down coal mines everywhere, because they're shutting down coal power plants, which is excellent. This is brilliant. But we can't get good forging coal anymore.
Yeah. Well, as a random side to that, Europe's largest steam rally, which was held in the UK for the last 50 years, they aren't running it anymore. Like last year I think it was the year before last, they ran it, and we went, and it was the smokiest year you've ever seen because the coke that they use as a byproduct from coal was not the same grade. It was horrible. It was just not good at all. And it was a lot more expensive. So it was not high quality, and it was more money, exactly for the reason you just described, Rasmus. And so they've just gone, hey, do you know what? We're done. That's it now. So that was an event that used to last a week. It would see millions of people travel to it. It was huge. It was, it was a very large event with lots of traction engines, and I know this is going wildly off topic. I will circle back, I promise. But it used to have an entire steam-powered only woodworking section where they would take free as it was and plank it, and then resaw it, and then thickness it and plane it. And then there'd be a guy with a steam-driven lathe, and then there'd be a guy over here with a steam. Everything was steam-driven, and you had the whole process from tree right the way through to finished product. And that was one section. And then over here, you had an arena that was like monster trucks and daredevil riders on motorbikes and stuff. And then
That's
over here, and then over here you've got like all of the showing off all of the animals from various farms and stuff. Like it was like a big county fair in the States, but mostly aimed around steam stuff. They even had a whole section where they dug it out and completely mocked it up to be World War I trenches.
Wow.
And they had reenactors there for the whole week, and it was like you could go down in the trenches and there would be like fake explosions and stuff, and like this thing was huge. It was well worth going to. Anyone who loved history, anyone who loved like mechanical and automotive and car collections, whatever, it was amazing. And literally because we've closed down X coal mine, that's gone.
That's an entire economy.
Yeah. There was a whole business that literally just ran that show every year, and the costs just kept going up, and they just said, look, this is not financially viable anymore. We're really sorry, guys. We've shut it down. And they did it in really quiet. They didn't say this is going to be the last year. They just kind of went, we've had this year and we're not doing next year.
Wow.
And that was it. And they literally just kind of went, we're really sorry. No event next year. Closed down phone lines and sort of any way of emailing them at all so that they couldn't take any flack.
Wow. Now I feel a little bit better about my white clays.
But yeah, I mean, can you imagine being the guy who's like, for the last 50 years, your annual biggest revenue event you go to is this event, and you're like, all right, when do I book it for next year? And it's gone. That's
Yeah.
not there anymore. So how do you go from there? So goal setting, been a wild ride today. Nice and light-hearted. No talk about potential. We've not mentioned the word depression. Oh, sorry, we've not mentioned that word at all, and skirted around many things. Hopefully that's been helpful. Hopefully it's been realistic, and if anyone's got a business-related conversation that they want to reach out to those of us who don't know us that well, then yes, we would be happy to talk to you about that. I can strongly advise those of you who work alone or are starting a small business on your own, if you don't have a friendship group that you have already formed, then find the courage to, whether it's join a Facebook group or whatever it is, of like-minded people. And don't just assume the first one you go to is going to be good, because they aren't all good. Hunt around and just find a group of people that you're happy to just lurk nearby and gradually interact with. If you happen to be in Europe, this is getting an early plug-in. If you happen to be in Europe and you haven't heard of Makers Central,
yes,
well worth looking up Makers Central. Well worth coming along and just hanging out with like-minded people. It's not necessarily the cheapest way of doing it. It will be loud and noisy, so if you are particularly adverse to that kind of environment, fair enough. But it's worth investigating that to try and find your tribe, because there is most likely going to be someone there, or a large group of someone's there, who would be more than willing to be friends with you, interact with you, and keep you sort of going through those times where it's a bit tougher. Myself and Rasmus will also be there.
You have been warned.
You have been warned that Rasmus will be there with his inappropriate and googly eyes and all sorts of things.
Yes.
Okay, guys. Well, I think that was a suitable welcome back episode. Let's start off deep and meaningful and descend into madness from here. And as always, you can find myself at Bevelwood UK.
But what we did since last time?
What did you do since last time? That's a lot of things. We've already gone over our hour slot. I think what you want me to ask is what goals do you have for the coming year?
Yes, maybe that one instead.
So Heidi, what's the one thing that you've done for your business since the last time we spoke, which is what Rasmus wanted me to ask?
Oh, well, we're getting so close to the studio being done. I put the floors in, and that was something that was pretty big for us. And Ben is finishing up the trim so that I can get my pottery wheel in there. Oh, and I ordered another pottery wheel, which is super exciting. So I will have a stand-up wheel and a sit-down wheel. And that just brings me closer to my goal of being able to have someone in my studio and teach them how to be passionate about pottery too. So fantastic. 2 big things.
Excellent. Rasmus, what about you?
I think since last time, I actually got the power hammer in.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the power hammer after we recorded last time.
And for those of you who don't know what a power hammer is, Google it. It is exactly as it sounds, and it's quite fun.
Yeah. And I've been spending the last week, 2 weeks, starting to get the workshop even more organized and getting the office furniture built and workbenches and all of those good things.
Nice.
So slowly but surely getting to a state where hopefully I will not be scatterbrained as much.
I'll believe it when I see it. So since we last spoke, what have I done? Well, with in mind the kind of the reset that I mentioned earlier, I have applied to be assessed by the Association of Woodturners of Great Britain to see whether I am good enough to be a tutor, which I already teach people wood turning in my day job, and I've basically said, could I did a little online thing and said, yes, I understand all of these, and submitted the test and passed that element of it. And now this is a practical assessment of my teaching skills. So I have to provide a student to teach and a project that can be completed in 45 minutes and an assessment of my individual skills as well. And if I pass, I get a recognised certificate and an overly large size badge to sew onto my wood turning smock. So it's literally about 6 inches in diameter to say that I am an approved tutor of the Association of Woodturners of Great Britain.
You're going to have that on one butt cheek?
Well, since the wood turning smock doesn't cover the butt cheeks as they are my best feature, Rasmus, then no, Sorry. I will not be covering that. It's most likely going to be on an arm or on my back. So yes, that's what I've done. Is I've applied to be more professional, but that's not till April, so I've got time to practice.
Procrastinate, you mean?
No, practice being more professional.
Oh, okay.
I also may have suggested to my wife that she might be willing to be my student for the day, so I've got time to teach her the same thing several times, maybe, possibly. We'll see. We'll see how well that goes.
That's great. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Okay, guys. Well, that was a good chat, and I don't think any of us intended it to be focused in that way when we initially discussed this topic, but I think it's very important that we did. So I'm very pleased to have spoken about that with you guys, and I'm sure we will again. So if you do want to find us, I am at Bevelwood UK on Instagram and everywhere else, and all those good kind of places. Heidi, where can people find you?
You can find me at Whitehall Pottery, pretty much anywhere. And Heidi Jacobs is my name.
Excellent. And Rasmus, where can people find you?
You can find me at Rasmus Loen on any of the mostly social places, and loensmed.no if you speak any kind of Norwegian-ish.
Yes, which, as I can freely talk about having witnessed there, is a very odd language that no one should try and learn. And that's Loen spelled Loen, for those of you who struggle to understand accents, which isn't that bad, but some people can't always get it. So thank you very much, guys. Lovely chatting to you as always. And don't forget, guys, we do have a Patreon account, so please look that up. And we will be improving the tiers on that as well. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.